So shall we? There we go. Okay. Right. Well, I guess we'll get going then. Okay. Yeah. So thanks so much for joining us, everyone. Welcome to our monthly speaker series, the Nexus, and this month with our guest Luan van Pletsen. So I'm Saskia. So I'll be guiding you through tonight's program. A little bit about me and my background. So I have a background in neuroaesthetics, and I do workshops and consulting in that field. I moved to Berlin at the start of this year and joined Edge towards the end of last year, and have been involved in the organization and on the events. And yeah, it's a little bit about me. Going to the next bit. So yeah, so before introducing the speaker, I'll just outline what you can look forward to this evening. So I'll give a brief word about Edge and the organization behind tonight's event, and then we'll hear Luan's talk, and then there'll be some time for questions at the end and discussion, and then the event will end around 8 p.m. Okay, so a little bit about Edge. So we're an international community consisting of artists and scientists dedicated to blurring the borders between art and neuroscience. So below you can see some photos of our team and the meetings that we've had both online and in person. So you can see some of the, online, and there's some of the online nexus that we've had and the in-person ones there. Okay. So our mission is to construct a synergetic community and resource network between artists and scientists, because we believe that these two fields can benefit so much from each other. For example, art can help to visualize and communicate neuroscientific findings to the public, and brain research can be a source of artistic inspiration. So our mission is to provide a platform for collaboration between artists and neuroscientists, and so I'm trying to connect both disciplines. And we do that through primarily through events like tonight, as well as workshops and multimedia art exhibitions that are open to the public. So if you would like to get involved with Edge, let me just we have well, I'll start with what it is. So we have a monthly speaker series called Nexus, which is a community and networking event exploring the intersection of art and neuroscience. And we do online and in-person formats. These are talks by selected speakers, some of whom here tonight. We've got Amelia and inspiring talks, and some are open to the public, and they're open to the public, but they're free for Edge members. And if you would like to get involved as an Edge member, you can also propose speakers or suggest topics or help to organize sessions. And our mission, it says, is to spotlight a range of perspectives at the intersection of art and neuroscience, and to showcase the diverse works of our members. So if you're interested in getting involved, or if you have a proposal for a future Nexus, you can drop ideas in the Slack channel if you're already in Slack, or you can email us at info@edge-neuro.art. So yeah, we have members. Yeah, so for our membership, so we're a member-based non-profit association. So when signing up as a member, you can support our association, and there are many ways to contribute, like in the event curation of like upcoming events. So you can sign up here with the barcode or from our website as well. So we have a few open calls of people who would like to be involved, mainly across communications. We're also looking for help with accounting, or as I say, if you'd like to speak at the Nexus next year in 2026, then feel free to reach out to the team. And also with event support, we're always looking for on-hand help for event support as well. So without further ado, I'll present our speaker, Luan. So Luan is an interdisciplinary artist building AI systems in the daytime and doing anything else by night. I'm sure we'll hear more about that. His sculpture, Wherefore I Am, exhibited with Edge in 2023. A recent 3D printing enthusiast, he loves guerrilla and street art. Okay, so I'll stop sharing and then hand over to Luan.
Alrighty. We did test this. It will work. Ta-da. Can everyone see this?
Perfect.
Yep. Mhm.
Okay, wicked. Alrighty. I promised Saskia a time limit for this talk, and I'm going to do my very, very best to stick to that time limit. I wanted to give you one of the weirder talks you've ever listened to, but then based on feedback from some dear friends, I decided to make it more intelligible. So please bear with what this is. I think we're in sort of like a really weird space at the moment because we have like incredibly rich individuals at the head of companies that are promising to change our whole reality. And yet at the same time, if we see the reality that they want to build for themselves, there's sort of like, I don't know, $50 million yachts and just like all kinds of like just bullshit that like isn't anything that I want to see in the world that I live in. So that's a truth. And then also at the same point, I'm paying sometimes multiple $20 a month subscriptions to their companies. And the guy who's collecting for Centerpoint homelessness charity says it costs about that much to rehome someone in a rehabilitation scheme. So honestly, like where we put our time and attention and money is really important. So yeah, I wanted to do a little bit of a play on the artificial intelligence, artificial wisdom thing, but I think what's important is as we augment intelligence, we need to be the wisdom. That's going to be my one takeaway. The other one is going to be uh, in LLMs, which is this very common form of AI that we're interacting with. There's like a kind of a real missing, there's like a hole in the middle of it, where most of the things that I would attribute consciousness to is not. So anyway, here we go. This is myself. Here's a picture of me. I'm a software engineer and an artist. Um, and yeah, I guess I'm very used to thinking in software terms, but artistry is where I feel like most of my intelligence is. Most of my like capacity as a being only comes out in unstructured contexts. So a quick disclaimer: I don't mind if you zone out or if you decide to put me on headphones and go for a walk and you listen about intelligence and wisdom while you watch people on the street. That's probably a really nice juxtaposition. I'm not telling you anything that's hard fact. I want your thoughts at the end of this. So please listen to it, let the words wash over you and have spontaneous thoughts. Yeah, these are just my opinions. And if it's a bit messy, deal with it. Okay, so here we go. We're going to talk about intelligence, what it is, what it isn't, wisdom, and the comparison. We're going to take a couple of heuristics, and I'm going to explain what those are as well, that I find helpful and particularly relevant in the AI age. We're going to look at some archetypes. We're just going to try and get a deeper understanding of wisdom that I think is an important concept now. Then we're going to look at computational minds, specifically LLMs, and we're going to look at some philosophical frameworks around that and how we should treat those intelligences and relate to them. And then, honestly, the wild mind, there are so many things I wanted to talk to you there, but not that I could have done in this talk and kept it palatable. So we'll do that later, but techno-animism, I'll quickly touch on. Let's go. So Andreas Kaplan is an AI researcher. He defines intelligence to be the interpreting of external data and using those learnings to achieve specific goals. So it's very goal-oriented. Remember which types of people we typically describe as being goal-oriented, right? So this is also heavily unchecked intelligence is a sign of psychopathy, but by itself, it's the achievement of goals that intelligence is all about. And then there's this other interpretation, which I also really like from Ole Hegström, which is about steering the future. So I can achieve concrete task outcomes. Tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to just minimize you here, Amy, if that's okay. So steering the
Couldn't see me
future.
anyway. We're
Oh,
gonna only
cool,
see your
sweet.
screen.
Oh, great. Okay, cool. So steering the future is about chess is a wonderful example here. So when I play chess against someone, I'm trying to steer the future of the chessboard into the outcomes where I win, and they're trying to steer the chessboard, the future of the chessboard, into other regions of the possibility space. So we can, I mean, so it's quite an abstract definition, but like steering the future and your ability to steer the future freely is what intelligence does for you. Whoop, there we go. And then also, so around the 80s, there was this movement to try and get a little bit more nuance. Let me get my cursor on here, which I hope you can see. A little bit laggy. Yeah, so there was this movement to define intelligence based on the types of tasks, because when we look at people, they have different capacities across different tasks, and practicing in one might have a bit of overlap, but you can quite specifically train your ability to follow tasks or to do, yeah, I mean, whether your own goals or someone else's, your ability to solve these problems can be region specific. Now, people smart and self-smart specifically, these are a little bit different to the rest because they're not so much goal-oriented. People smart can kind of also begin to allude to these things like morality that typically is in the domain of wisdom, and self-smart as well, your ability to understand what your goals are and what drives you and how to relate to the world based on being the specific consciousness that you are. That also comes quite squarely within the domain of wisdom. And so even in this lens that's just trying to be specifically about intelligence, we find some aspects of wisdom creeping in there. So let's get a definition, and then we can contrast these two a little bit better. Here's Wikipedia's quite nice wishy-washy one. The ability to understand and respond to reality in a balanced and thoughtful manner. It's nice and hand-washy, but maybe if we compare them, we can get a little bit more concrete. Unlike intelligence, which primarily concerns problem solving and reasoning, wisdom involves a deeper comprehension of human nature, moral principles, and the long-term consequences of action. So if we look at problem solving, so whether it's a musical problem, you need to come up with a new transition for the chord sequence, whatever it is, solve this math problem, right? Here's the problem, I need you to find the answer. Wisdom is the ability to zoom out a little bit and see what the consequences of solving this problem are on a wider scale. And if you're part of the Manhattan Project, or you're working in a place that your company is also developing weapons on the side, you realize maybe it's not really about the problem that you're solving. You understand that the consequences are going to stretch far beyond what's being told to you or simply what is in front of you. So wisdom is about this. Yeah, it's about being able to take in more than would be typically needed just to solve the problem. And I think another way to understand that quite well is to look at the paperclip optimizer, which is our classic example of what happens when you don't have wisdom. So the story goes, let's say it's an American company. An American stationery company creates a paperclip machine whose sole job is to take everything around it and turn it into paperclips. The machine is so I was almost going to say wise. It's so intelligent that it's able to not only consume the things in its environment, turn them into paper clips, but also it begins to make money for itself and be able to pay lawyers to change laws so that it can just kind of like slowly consume everything in its environment. And even though that sounds far-fetched, we have this very caricaturized, to be fair, idea of like the classic evil American corporation, which isn't really it's never necessarily the intention from the beginning, but there because of the legal traditions surrounding stakeholders, the duty of company directors to benefit stakeholders in a financial context, and some court cases like the Ford Motor Company, who basically Henry Ford wanted to make cheaper cars and pay the laborers better, and then was sued by begins with a D, but they were sued by some influential board members to basically not be able to do that. The courts ruled in favor of the shareholders that Ford's responsibility was not to do these things that would increase wages and make the cars more affordable, but they were required to maximize profit for those shareholders. And the legal tradition has followed for a lot of corporate governance culture. So this is a problem which is now, right? Like, and if we look at the world and we look at the vehicles of influence on our world, many of them have incentive structures which are misaligned with what we're actually looking for them to do. If we look, so okay, there's a whole bunch of stuff. So let's take a pause. What are we going to do about it, right? So we need to find a way to get back in touch with some sources of wisdom, right? Like if it's a simple black and white, it's intelligence versus wisdom. Let's see how we can integrate more wisdom in our lives, even just individually. So I think we can do that by better understanding what we mean by wisdom and some of the mechanism underneath it, because I can't help it, I'm an engineer. So let's look at the traditional sources. Typically, we use things like folk tales. If there's like a cultural truth that we want to convey to people, or to children that maybe don't understand the lessons we're trying to teach them, but we need to keep them away from stepmothers, right? Is the typical one, but like bridge trolls or dangerous people in their lives. We don't want to spell out for them what the consequences are, but we need them to change their behavior based on a piece of information that we give them. So we disguise them as folk tales, and these are some of the ways that we provide information in a roundabout way. Religion as well is trying to provide pastoral guidance to a range of people that are going to have very different living circumstances, different specifics, but we want to give general advice that's going to be applicable broadly. And then philosophy is looking at the way that we know and understand the world. And it is looking for, well, it's looking for like mismatches, right? Where we've made assumptions about the world that aren't true. And it's trying to provide rigorous frameworks that can allow us to change those conceptions or provide new ones that might help us. Where are we going next? Here. So I think one of the things that comes out of that quite strongly, that I think wisdom offers, often the really valuable things that we count as wisdom are heuristics, which are they're rules of thumb. They're general things, which they're not like hard and fast facts, but if it works more often than not, right? If it's good enough advice, then it can be useful to a broad range of circumstances and to a broad range of people, because like you don't have to fully understand a problem to be able to use a heuristic. And so we get an output that's far more intelligent than we would do without the heuristic. And the best example of this is chess. Again, I don't play much chess, hey? So when I play chess, this is the heuristic that I remember, that controlling the center of the board is often important, right? Like there's the specifics, but if you control the center of the board, then you generally are in a better position than your opponent to be able to move pieces freely and develop your position. So controlling the center of the board in chess, without that sentence, like my ability in chess is way less than it is now, right? And we'll measure that at some point. But generally, heuristics can be really simple and incredibly valuable, and they're our ability to work with what is a limited intelligence and produce effects that are far greater. Now, yeah, this is going to get a bit wishy-washy here, but these are the things that I live my life by, that provide me the most happiness, which is one of my North Stars. So my heuristics for life that I find particularly applicable now, it's incredibly important to me, like the ability to say, if I'm worrying about something, that it probably doesn't matter is life-saving, right? So it probably doesn't matter means two things. if I'm worried about something and I say it probably doesn't matter, and then I go, oh, phew, I don't have to worry about it, then I've reduced my exposure to noise in like an incredibly noise heavy time, right? Like you can watch the news and be upset forever. But if you can find a way to say that it probably doesn't matter, then you can let yourself off the hook and focus on signal that really matters for you. And if you say it probably doesn't matter, but you're still interested in the thing, like, oh, I was gonna make another zine today, but I didn't do it. It probably doesn't matter, right? Actually, squarely doesn't matter. But if I still want to do it, then it's an indication to me of what's actually important, and it gives me clarity on my priorities. Um, yeah, by sort of like indiscriminately applying it to everything and seeing what my feelings are. And then good enough is also really important because I suppose um, for two reasons. Firstly, I'm a diehard perfectionist, and most of this presentation was trial run with Seraphine at 11 p.m. last night. So yes, at some point you kind of just have to say good enough. And if we're in a world where possibilities are literally endless, like you can sit here and you can get AI to build you a video game, um, like at some point you have to say like it's good enough. Like you've done enough different things, or this experiment is good enough, and yeah, and see what else is available. Chasing beauty is one of my weirder ones. I find beauty to be like empirically a really great guiding star. I think Saskia can talk to you guys more about aesthetics and how we perceive beauty and what the role of beauty is in the brain. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, hey, but like the things that we found really important to our survival, like water, like resources in the landscape, like those aspects became encoded really deeply in the structure of our brains. And so if we perceive something as beautiful, there's something underlying there which yeah, which was developed in an environment to allow us to survive better. And um, if anyone knows the discovery of E8, the story there, that's also a really beautiful one. Beauty and symmetry and all of these things like seem to be present in the rules that govern a lot of the universe and the development of the universe. So for me, that's enough to make a metaphysical claim that I think beauty is somewhere out there in the spiritual. And if I chase beauty, then aspects of my life change sufficiently to merit that. And then this one I rephrased a little bit, but what do you want to tell your grandkids? Like if you have to pick between two options, like, which one makes the better story? If you're like, and what did you do when you whatever? Like sometimes you've got to just do something that's unexpected, that's a little maybe stupid, right? Maybe it's like maybe it doesn't make sense if you think about it. But you just want to, and you decide to do it anyway, because yeah, we get to live one life. Oh. Okay, I hope everyone's still with me. Let's do a quick recap. So we've got intelligence is about problem solving, and there are different types of intelligence. It's domain specific. Then on the other hand, we have wisdom is about understanding deeper consequences and finding heuristics to handle complex problems with finite minds. Now, in the world that we are going into, of being heavily augmented minds, right? Beyond just a telephone that's giving us connectivity or the ability to access data on the fly, we now have the ability to reason, right? I can ask ChatGPT what it thinks about something I'm deciding to do, and it can reason for me, which is wild. That's very new. And if that's going to be the case, and if large language models are capable at certain tasks more than others, then the system of me with ChatGPT in my phone, like that system is now more capable at certain things, right? So ChatGPT is really good at writing, it's really good at doing maths, it's really good at coding, right? So I'm augmenting myself in an ability to at my day job write code really fast, right? And understand actually to understand so much about the inner workings of a computer that normally good design principles would say you should never touch them. But because it knows how to do it, I can ask it to solve this problem for me, and it will like go back into the wiring and like change around some shit that I would never want it to change. But now it has, right? And so like overall, I would say the wisdom of the approach that we took to solve that problem, was low. But to be mindful of the fact that the agents that we're using are biased in specific directions, their capabilities are augmenting us asymmetrically. Yeah, that means that we have to find ways to be the balance and to rebalance ourselves. Where are we at? Now we're going to get a little bit weirder, which is more to my liking. Let's look at the archetypes of wisdom and see if we can pull out some kernels there that can help us in our lives to make decisions in a wiser way. Here are some archetypes we might like to emulate. So these folk tales and parables from religion and whatever the other one was, philosophers, I guess, are even one of the archetypes. So these are the characters that are normally conveying the wisdom to the main character in the story. We have the sage, the philosopher, the mystic, the shaman or seer, and the trickster or fool, which is my personal favorite. The methods that these archetypes use are reclusion. So the sage and the philosopher are typically not involved in everyday life. What they do is they choose to retreat away from the busy happenings of everything around so that they can observe from a distance and not be caught up in noise. They can find true meaningful signal in a space that otherwise, for the majority of people, is too confusing to make real lasting sense from. Then there's mysticism and intuition, which I loved the plug of the seance, which is going to happen at Berlin Science Week. That's amazing. There's this, we have such a rich history of religious traditions, of animism, of shamanism, of different trance-based practices which tap us into deeper parts of ourselves that are hidden from the conscious mind. I think that in itself should be something which we include more in our unconscious models of what it means to be human. Like trance and the unknown and the unexpected, all of these things are very powerful sources of wisdom and of knowledge. But mysticism and intuition are deferring to some other alternative power which often isn't listened to. So whether that's like an outer power, like you're listening to the spirits of the forest, which we can talk about again later, but these like external deities, or whether like in a Jungian context, you're going inside and you're finding the archetypes of your own mind and the kind of narratives and portrayals that are happening there to get to like the heart of a problem in a way that reasoning can't. These are really powerful sources of wisdom. And then finally, paradox. You don't know what the rules are until you break them, right? So you have to trust to a certain degree, sometimes in chaos. Like if you're stuck, what you need is like a good kick in an unknown direction, and then you'll figure yourself out from a new place, and maybe that problem will look different from a different perspective. And you want to test the edges of your models, because if you don't know where they break down, you don't know where you can trust them. So, quick pause for breath. Yes, we're in the weirder portion of the talk now. I want to talk a little bit about computational minds and this thing which I hinted at the beginning, which is what type of mind is a large language model? So large language models, for those that aren't familiar, they're the technology that's powering things like ChatGPT. The way that they're trained, so there's a variety of different architectures that we can make these with, but the transformer, those that are technically minded, the transformer is the architecture that is most common for large language models. What we do is we take all of the text that we can legally or illegally get our hands on. We create a training function which is trying to predict accurately the next word in a phrase. So large language models become these very complex statistical models which are able to predict the probability of a word being next in a sentence. So as it spits out one by one each word in a sentence, it makes language purely from the statistical relationships already present in the writing which we fed into the training algorithm. So the fact that I can have a conversation with it, maybe even develop a relationship with it, romantic relationships with large language models are on the rise, but I think we need to have a quick look at what they are. How do we meaningfully categorize these intelligences? And yeah, this bit's going to be fun. So we've got two philosophers that I really like, and I think they contrast with each other quite nicely. Descartes, who you're familiar with, it's the I think, therefore I am philosopher. Descartes found this particular kernel of knowledge by doubting everything in the environment and coming to the one thing which he couldn't doubt, which is that if I think, I must exist. I can hear myself, this voice in my mind, and the fact that I can hear it means that it must exist, right? I can't be hallucinating myself, thinking that I'm hearing myself. And that's a brilliant piece of logic. The problem of building a sense of self around that alone, which a little bit is what the Western world did, is that I become identified with my thinking voice in my head, right? If that's the only thing that I can trust to be real, then my sense of I also becomes the I that's thinking. It's like me, I'm saying words, but I'm also thinking about the fact that I'm giving a presentation, but it's all in words. It's all like generally located in my head region, if I'm going to feel into it. And to contrast this, Merleau-Ponty is he's a very feeling-based philosopher. Most of his work is about the phenomenology of perception, and it's about the primacy, it's about perception being the only thing that we can really trust as being real, that our relationships with objects isn't about them existing in an abstract sense, independent of our observation. It's about what we perceive being the only thing that's real. And I think if we take his writings as a basis for identity, we get something very different. So I'm going to invite you guys quickly to just maybe let's all take a nice deep breath. And then take your hand and place it on any object, right? So I want you to feel the feeling of this object in your hand. And you're kind of going to imagine, instead of trusting that you exist because you can think and hear that, the fact that you can feel something is also confirmation of your existence, that feeling by itself. I feel, therefore I am. But if you focus not on the word or the idea and just the feeling itself, you'll notice that it's telling you that you exist in a way that doesn't need language. Like it's a wordless affirmation of your existence that you are perceiving. And I think if there are any musicians in the room, it's very similar to the difference between thinking out a melody you want to play and then trying to play it versus allowing yourself to explore the instrument and then enjoying the sound that emerges. They're two different orientations that you can approach life with. So there's a huge difference here. I think it's important to say as well. We're a culture that is very often criticized for our lack of sensitivity. So this distinction may be at the heart of why our philosophy allowed such a let's say heartless society to emerge. But that's not why we're here. So this sense of feeling is incredibly important. Philosophers amongst you will know of this as qualia. That's what we're talking about here. But it's the knowledge through experience. And large language models, by contrast, have never seen the color red, right? They've seen many texts on the color red. They are the blind person in the example in philosophy classes that can never understand the feeling of red because they don't have senses in the way that we do. They understand where red should follow statistically in a sentence, so they can create language describing it, but they can't feel it. And yes, they don't have access to qualia, and they live in this purely symbolic world. And so what they're able to do is really convincingly reproduce language that sounds as if they're alive in the world, but they're really just following patterns which are based on our experiences. Now, what this means is, or if we think about thinking and language for a minute, I like to think of thoughts as the waves over the top of the ocean. And the reason I do that is because with practice, I can go a whole day without thinking anything, right? I can, if you've been at a meditation retreat where you have those beautiful moments of clarity and you're just going through, you're washing the dishes and you're alive and you're present with yourself and you're doing what you're meant to be doing, but you don't need language to make decisions, to interact with the world. And so the language then, when language occurs and there's a voice in my head, I see them as these like crests of the wave, and the whole rest of the ocean is this non-verbal intelligence and ability to be and interact with the world. So if that's what's true for humans and for human reasoning, then the crests are really just like the cosmetic surface of a whole body of thinking that's happening all the time. And yeah, and it's a purely cosmetic phenomenon. The thing is, if we train LLMs to only be able to recreate this surface phenomenon, then what they're missing is like the whole experience of life. That's what that makes that language meaningful in any sense, right? Like we only, yeah, we use language because we have a pre-existing life or task, and it's a helpful way to reason, but it's not at all part of the life that we're living. It's just another tool. So yeah, that's where I think that LLMs are kind of a very groundless form of intelligence. And Andrej Karpathy, who's also a very notable AI scientist, he described in a recent talk, he said we're summoning ghosts when we talk to large language models. We summon ghosts, like these like hollow, almost echoes that can respond to us, but there's nothing home. I don't know why that's there. Okay, then I hinted at ways of being that don't need language, and Zen is one of the best examples of a tradition that is highlighting to us the limitations of language. So there's a monk called Nagasena in a story, and a king visits Nagasena on a chariot, and Nagasena asks the king, "Hey, did you get here on a chariot?" And the king is like, "Yes." And Nagasena's like, "Oh, will you tell me about like what is a chariot?" And points at the wheel, and he says, "Is this the chariot?" And the king is like, "No, no, that's just the wheel." And points at the spoke, and "Is this the chariot?" And the king's like, "No, no, that's just the spoke." And then eventually, I mean, I guess this is incredibly long-winded to do, but Nagasena gets them to lay out all of the components of a chariot on the ground and says, like, is this the chariot? Like the collection of all of the pieces? No. Is the chariot somewhere else? Like, also no. So the chariot, like the label that we have and the concept that we have, is just a fiction that kind of arises out of nothing from assembling these parts, none of which are the chariot, and then suddenly it's there as soon as the function begins. And that's not really like a magical thing. It's just an illusion that is over the top of the reality that's there. We're so used to thinking in terms of symbols and concepts and frameworks that we forget that they're not real, right? Like all of these things are fluid definitions based on like a very small region where all of these pieces are together in the right way. Now it's a chariot, and we forget like that's literally just like a functional concept in our mind which doesn't have like a truth apart from us calling it that. And I think what struck me the other day was like, if you're the first person to invent a chariot, and you're like putting together all these things, and you don't tell anyone and you don't name it, right? There's no such thing as a chariot, and the thing that you've built isn't a chariot until you decide to call it that. And so all of these labels that we're so desperately trying to teach AI how to recognize, right? And all of the captures that you fill in on websites, you're picking the squares so that some image algorithm somewhere can better identify traffic lights. It's steering us into a direction which is useful, but makes a lot of assumptions about what we want truth to be, and what kind of truths we want to focus on. And yeah, I think it's important also to see that reality is more fluid and more fundamental than the ways we are used to moving through it. Okay, I hope everyone's with me. I can't see any of your faces. This is the last bit I want to talk about. Saskia, I'm sorry, it'll be soon. Another 5 minutes. So let's talk about animism. I mentioned briefly that one of the ways of incorporating wisdom into your life can be to look for input from external deities, right? Spirits in the forest, or all of these things are very, very foundational to how we've lived with the nature around us for many, many years before the advent of Christianity or modernity. And I think it's quite interesting to think about machines becoming more and more aware, or more and more sophisticated, but kind of evolving on their own terms. So here they are. Each of these is modeled on a real piece of electronics, crawling out of the ocean, evolving into sentience, right? That's the joke here. But I like thinking about a world where there are no humans, right? Or the humans are invisible. And what you end up seeing is this sort of like pantomime of all of the scientists are putting together more and more complicated machines. And from looking at it just right, you kind of go, oh shit, maybe it's a little bit more like the flowers and the bees, where flowers, the ones that require bees, can't reproduce by themselves. So they find a way to like employ bees to move their genetic material around for them. And actually, like the plants are kind of just one half of an organism, because without bees, they don't exist. Like the full living thing kind of requires both. So we have this, yeah, and this is us kind of like playing the illusion in the background. Like we're like carrying all of these designs around, trying to build machines that get more and more complicated and more capable of like doing things for themselves. And we're sort of like in a symbiotic relationship where we affect technology and technology is dependent on us. And anyway, there's a great term called technoeconomics, which is sort of about this like swirling energy which moves forwards as we are influenced to build things, and it influences us to keep building it. Yeah, I wrote a series about it. I think there's a link we can provide. So if you're interested in that, check it out. What I think can do potentially, this is a thought experiment. If we look at the ecosystem of tech development, technological development, hardware as well, if we look at that ecosystem and we maybe think it's a little bit like a forest which is alive in its own right, then it might be helpful for us. Firstly, we can imagine certain spirits that are maybe present. Oh, I see. We are very close to the end. Yeah. So there's a couple of things we can do. I think imagining spirits would be an interesting way to relate to the different elements of that ecosystem. And the other thing is assigning an identity that is kind of governing all of these aspects of technology. Yeah. Talk to me about it in the discussion. I'd love to talk about the wild brain, but it's going to be next time. And that has been me. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. Oh, yeah. Please talk to me about any of these things if you're watching the video later. And you can find me here or on my email. Okay. And this is cool too. All right. Bye.
Okay, thanks so much, Luan. That was great. That was so interesting. And yeah, it was very different. Yeah, very philosophical lens, which was really, really interesting to listen to. And yeah, and it's true. You need to, I mean, sort of, we don't often think about like with machines how they do lack a sense of meaning and they don't have intentionality, and yet we often sort of work with them and treat them, especially using ChatGPT, as if they do, which is something to
Yeah.
be wary of.
Did I leave enough time for the discussion?
We did, yes.
Just about. Sweet.
Just yeah, a little bit of discussion. Yeah, absolutely. I'll hmm, just give me a second. Okay, right. Okay, and we're back. Um, Let me just. Okay, great. So, yeah. So thank you, Luan. That was very interesting. Yeah, so before we get on to the discussion, I just have a couple of one or two things from me. Um, so before we close, just a quick note. So Edge is completely volunteer run. To keep these events going and maintain our platforms and cover basic costs, we rely on community support. So if you've enjoyed tonight and you'd like to help us grow, please consider making a small donation by scanning the PayPal code, and every bit makes a difference, and it's all very much appreciated. Yeah, leave that for a second. And yeah, I'll have one or two notes on our upcoming events. So yeah, so we have Berlin Science Week coming up next week. And on the 9th of November, we'll be holding a panel discussion. And it's part of an exhibition that we're doing, well, that is done by Hidden Variable, the collective Hidden Variable. And we'll be hosting a panel discussion on extraordinary senses with these four speakers. So we'll have Tuli Wolf, who's an art therapist, Dr. Pratik Bede, who is a neuroscientist, who is a professor at Charité and is now works in consulting in neuroscience, Laurie Baldwin, a performance artist, and Dr. Michael Schmucker, who's a specialist in olfaction. So if you're around on the 9th of November, then please do join us. It'll be at Mahala at 3 p.m. And then lastly, at the end of November, we'll have the event with Co-Creation Loft. So this is a creative health evening. It'll be hosted at the Loft, which you can see here. And it's going to be, yeah, it'll be a really interesting evening. There'll be a series of talks, of like short talks on the healing arts, on how experiences of awe benefit health and well-being. And we'll have like guided meditations and visualizations as well. So yeah, if you're around then 27th of November, I think the tickets will be released for that very soon. Okay, so back to Luan's talk. Do we have any questions or any points of discussion?
Yeah, I've got a question. But firstly, I want to say thanks, Luan. That was a really, really interesting presentation. I was wondering, so how would you personally tell whether a machine is wise or not? Like, that's just a question I kept like thinking about during your presentation. Like, how do you even know?
Right. I think we should allow ourselves to say that wisdom is a feeling, right? Like intuition, like all of these other ways of knowing, I think are super important and overlooked, right, in most of culture. So I think you're allowed to, this is how I get out of this one, maybe does it feel wise, right? That's one
Sure.
way.
Mm.
What I also ran some experiments with, they're a little bit cringy to put on here, but if you're asking ChatGPT to give you advice about something, you can also prompt a character for it to give you advice as. So if you're aware that you're maybe, very linear in your thinking, or even just that day, you're feeling very linear in your thinking, can you come up with an archetype that you think would complement your perspective that might give you something like unexpected in that day? Because at the end of the day, like we don't want like large language models to just reinforce what we think already, because we can just talk to ourselves in our head. If we want
Mm.
something different, then maybe we can prompt that. Which doesn't fully answer your question, but like some of these archetypes I spoke about here, I I simulated advice from each of the different perspectives, and they were cool. Like it was interesting. Um, Claude feels pretty good. I mean, I know you use AI a lot, right? So I think
Mm,
Claude has a certain like something to it feels, yeah, nuanced.
nice. Yeah,
And you?
I get, yeah, for me, I think it's so hard. Like, 'cause I guess I'm using AI constantly as a tool more than I'm using it as
Hmm.
like a conversation partner.
Hmm.
Um, so for me, I feel so like, I guess, removed from the kind of more human aspect of AI
Mm,
that a lot of people are exposed to. Like we found
right.
out that there's people who actually like help others in AI relationships now.
Yeah,
Like that's an
totally.
actual dating coach thing, which is kind
So
of
wild.
wild.
So wild.
Um, and I'm so on the other end of that, right? Only
Right.
using it as a tool, and I'm actually trying to like distance myself away from it. I'm wondering whether that's like whether that's good or bad. I don't know whether,
Mm.
or should
So
we
I,
just
I
use
think,
that as a tool, you know?
yeah,
Yeah.
I guess I want to like have
Bring,
space for other people to ask questions as well,
yeah.
but you seeded something perfect there, which like the reason that animism has been so prevalent in our history speaks to the fact that an entity that we can anthropomorphize is an amazing interface to an intelligence or to a body of knowledge, right? What the forest is feeling or saying to us that we've perceived, we can organize that into a way that we can speak to as if it's another member of our tribe. And I can talk to Claude through an interface that I'm very practiced with, which is conversation. So I think we want to increase that. We just need to remember that there's no one home, like even though it says there is, it's just like there's actually nothing there. Um,
Mm.
yeah. Anybody else? Thank you for that, Chris. So no, no. Oh, Josh, you got your hand up.
Josh?
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Oh yeah, but you can go, Amy. Sorry, I don't.
No, I just wanted to say that you had your hand up, so it's
Oh,
go,
oh,
go
okay,
for it.
perfect. Maybe I should. Yeah, sorry, wasting time. So I really like the idea of this like surface level like layer of knowledge on
Mm,
top of this like sea of a lot more information underneath. On
mm,
this mental model of like heuristics, being able to elevate what
yes.
you can do. I guess I have kind of two questions. One is, as someone who uses that, yeah, how do you think we can use heuristics to also help the language models like access that lower layer or like simulate it better? And then secondly, do you think as humans we can use it to access that more nonverbal layer ourselves, or is that like the wrong place? Is that where people are going that they shouldn't be going for it? Is that
Mm.
somewhere, or do you expect that coming down the line that people will use it to help them access those other parts of themselves that are deeper? Um,
So the one that I hear a lot, right, and you guys have heard as well, is like sometimes just take a breath, Like sometimes you just take a breath, and if you breathe, then like things become clearer. And that's an incredibly dumb instruction for a culture where like we think that getting more intelligent is about like, can I listen to my podcasts at 3 times speed while also reading, And like that's so valuable as a tool for teaching us how to drive our own consciousnesses. So I think that's like a super interesting thing for us. Like, great question about whether we can use heuristics to make AIs more understanding of our situation. I think short of like basically coaching like the other half of the relationship, right? So maybe doing couples counseling with the LLM and trying to get some like training data so that they're better able to understand how human neurology works. But again, like I'm creating an identity there, which isn't. Um, I don't know. Like I think there's Anthropic is doing some amazing work in however they're getting the responses out, because like I will come to it with a problem. And when I was doing the whole I was asking it, don't worry. I was like, oh, I want to quit my job because I'm burnt out but I don't want to start over. That was the example that it gave me to work through from different archetypes. And then I tried it on Anthropics Anthropic's AI instead of ChatGPT, and it kind of did a lot of the same things. So it got me to just like pause and like take a breath, have a think about my circumstances first before I do anything rash. So those things are kind of coming there because we have functional needs that we're coming to LLMs from, and like within the remit of training, we need it to provide good answers, and it's going to be good defined on our terms. Can we use heuristics on the LLM side? I don't know. I think we need to try. Like, if I think maybe I'd begin to do that, like, hey, as a general heuristic, it's better to make a reusable component than to code something like hard in the page. Like, that's probably something that I would maybe say explicitly in a prompt, so it's more likely to do it. But that, again, that's very like domain specific. I don't know. Maybe a heuristic would be, as my assistant, hi,
M
I'm not
dashes.
looking for.
That's
Say again.
no M dashes. It's just a prompt. But
What's M dash?
this is my personal gripe, like all the time, because in the text outputs, there's just this M dash, which is it's even longer than
Oh, the little.
ChatGPT, like the long
Yeah.
American dash, and it's like
Stop doing that. Yeah.
everywhere. And like, and it's immediately like a little signal, and people are getting annoyed now because they're like, I used M dashes, I have
Exactly.
grammar, but now I
Yes.
can't because it's used every sentence.
Right.
That's also another domain specific, but like uses of like, and now it's going, people are complaining that it wasn't semicolons and now it's semicolon because it's just going around. But there's so many grammatical ones that are just turning around themselves to be detected, undetected.
Yeah.
Don't be detected.
Yeah. I guess for me, I'd want it to be more unpredictable. Unless, like, if I'm using it for code, I want it to be very, very what I tell it to do. Otherwise, I want it to be unpredictable because I have ideas about what to do. I'm looking for new input that I haven't considered. So my heuristic to an assistant would be like, be
creative.
weirder. Yeah, or creative is a nice way to put that.
I loved
Yeah.
how
Yeah,
you
totally.
said it's something that like takes one level and like amplifies it, like you said with the chess analogy of like
Mm,
it can like yeah. Thank you for that, by the way.
right.
That's I'm gonna be thinking
No,
about this a lot.
totally. Yeah, me too. Thanks.
Yeah. It's like, how do you make something unpredictable that's programmed to predict the next word? It's like almost like a paradox.
Don't. Yeah, it's a paradox, isn't it?
A little bit. Yeah. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I wonder, do we have time for one more question? Or I suppose we're a little bit over time, 5 past.
I was kind of, I mean, thank you very much for the talk. It was wonderful. And I just generally wanted, I was curious where everyone was coming from here in the crowd because we have like kind of a mix and yeah, of new people as well. I guess some of you are working at an AI, like with AI directly
Consultancy.
at work.
Yes.
Yeah. So I was curious about that. I don't know if we have time to go around with that, but maybe you can even put a message in the
Yeah.
messaging board, like what you're working on to get an idea.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry
Yeah. So
about the lag.
Chris and Josh work, Luan, building AI things. Cool.
Yeah, sorry. Chris and I and build generative AI products for clients is the more like businessy, sort of thing. So text, language models, text to speech, speech to text, language models and stuff. And nerd out about it. So it's very fun to hear this philosophy enthusiast.
Yes. Seraphine as well is neglecting to say that she is a physicist working on structured light, which is like a quantum mechanical phenomenon, and attosecond light pulses, which is some absolutely wild shenanigans, and is an incredible artist. So I feel like you guys would have some things to talk about. Yeah, cool thing as well.
Yeah, I think
Sorry,
we should.
Seraphine. One more cool thing. So the space between.
Sorry, I was just gonna say we should definitely.
No, do it.
Sorry.
We've got lag.
My internet's a little laggy. Just
Yeah,
gonna
it's
say
fine.
that the AI topic is very interesting, and the philosophical aspect of it that you've approached from is not something we've talked about so recently, so much in our community. So I really hope we continue these discussions and also talk about where neuroscience and art, like where they touch upon that. Yeah, so I hope we can, but please say what you were going to say. I just wanted to prompt that we should talk about this more. I really hope
Totally.
some new people here as well come again and maybe give more insight on what they're doing in terms of how that touches upon the subject.
Totally. So the little fact, I'm going to wrap it in a broader context, like I know what I'm talking about. There are some like mystical things that I really wanted to get into as well. Like alchemy, I think, is one of the most interesting things in history that I want to talk about, because it's this really strange way of doing almost tarot with chemicals. So observing chemical reactions and creating a psychodrama in your head, which allows you to get at different knowledge, right? Like you observe and you see the things that your subconscious needs you to see to get to the right answer. Fascinating. What Seraphine, she works on attosecond light pulses, and why I think it's so cool is that the relative gap between a second and an attosecond is the same relative gap as from a second to the age of the universe, like the age of the observable universe. So that space, if this is, and I'm so sorry, I think it's like with like Planck time, or like the frame rate of the universe, the lowest observable time. There's as many like new frames in the in a second as there are seconds that have ever existed in the universe. So there's like a certain really amazing symmetry there in this whole like fractal structure of time and the universe, that like for every second there are as many discrete possibilities as there have been seconds in the universe. And that's like a really nice thing for me to meditate on, possibly with the consumption of psychedelics and substances which are legal in some domains and not in others. But yeah, so that's a really, I love that. I find that very trippy. Looks up attoseconds. Hell yeah. Yeah, it's dope.
First time I hear about this. Amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's super, super trippy. Yeah, at some point. Well, I anyway, I think I can't make Science Week this year, but we'll have to find an excuse to come over to Berlin and do some workshops and some workshop days making art and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. After next year, I think I'm sure we have a few things in the pipeline that we can definitely do that.
100%.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Well, yeah, I think